candle flickers. Wax pools like small lakes of surrender on the mahogany table. And somewhere in the distance, a clock ticks with the patience of a predator. Listen closely, and you'll hear it. The sound of 1,000 men mistaking the actress for the role. There's an old Venetian tale, whispered in the brothels near the Rialto Bridge, about a courtesan who fell in love with her own reflection in a client's eyes. She spent years perfecting the gestures he desired, the tilt of her head, the cadence of her laugh, the precise temperature of her sighs. One night, she found him weeping in her chambers. "I've fallen in love with someone else," he confessed. When she asked who, he showed her a portrait. It was her, but painted from memory, an idealized version that existed nowhere but in his fevered imagination. She laughed until she cried. Or perhaps she cried until she laughed. The chronicles disagree. Modern psychology calls it the chameleon effect. That unconscious mimicry of desires, where attraction becomes a hall of mirrors reflecting what we think we want to see. A 2024 study from the Journal of Interpersonal Dynamics found that 73% of women admitted to performing enthusiasm for their partner's interests in the first 6 months of courtship. But here's the delicious poison in that statistic. The men never asked them to. Picture this. A woman sits across from you at dinner, her eyes bright with fabricated fascination as you explain cryptocurrency or Stoic philosophy, or whatever altar you've built to your own intelligence. She nods. She asks questions. She plays the student to your weary professor. And you, poor deluded Pygmalion, you actually believe you found your Galatea. But Machiavelli knew better. "Everyone sees what you appear to be," he wrote. "Few experience what you really are." Poesia. In love's grand theater, we're all watching shadows on cave walls, mistaking the performance for the performer. The summer air hangs thick with jasmine and deception. Have you ever noticed how a woman's loyalty often smells like expensive perfume? Beautiful, intoxicating, and entirely manufactured? It's not malice, you understand. It's survival. She learned long ago that men fall in love with their own projections. So why not become the perfect screen? Here's what Schopenhauer understood that you don't. We forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people. But in romance, we forfeit even more. We forfeit our entire being to become what we imagine the other desires. I once knew a man who swore his wife was devoted to him. Every morning she prepared his coffee exactly as he liked. 2 sugars, a whisper of cream. Every evening, she listened to his complaints about work with the patience of a medieval saint. For 20 years, this ritual continued. Then, she died. In her diary, he found a single line repeated across decades. "I have always hated the smell of coffee." Tell me, dear listener, and be grotesquely honest, have you ever been loved, or have you only been performed to? Can you distinguish between a woman's genuine desire and her masterful improvisation? Or have you, like most men, fallen in love with your own reflection in her carefully polished mirror? The velvet curtains in the room seem to breathe with a life of their own, hiding secrets in their folds. Somewhere a woman is practicing her lines for tomorrow's performance. Somewhere else, a man is applauding, tears in his eyes, believing every word. The cruelest joke? She might believe it too. Method acting has a way of becoming reality, until even the actress forgets where the role ends and she begins. But Tuesday always comes. The lights always dim. And in that brutal honesty of 3 a.m., when the performance is over and the audience has gone home, she stares at the ceiling and wonders who she really is beneath all these borrowed desires. You want loyalty? First ask yourself, loyalty to what? To you or to the character you've unconsciously scripted for her to play? The more perfectly preserved the corpse, the more obviously dead it becomes. Have you ever held a butterfly in formaldehyde? Its wings spread in eternal flight, colors still vivid, every detail captured in crystalline permanence. Beautiful, perfect, and utterly, grotesquely lifeless. This is what men do to love. We embalm it while it still breathes. There's a peculiar phenomenon in Japanese folklore called ikizukuri, the preparation of live seafood. The fish continues to move on the plate, gills fluttering, eyes still seeing, while diners consume its flesh. The Japanese consider this the height of freshness. I consider it the perfect metaphor for modern relationships. We devour what we claim to cherish, mistaking its death throes for vitality. A 2025 study in Behavioral Psychology Quarterly revealed something delicious in its darkness. Couples who reported the highest relationship security also showed the steepest decline in passion markers: dilated pupils, elevated heart rate, spontaneous touch. Security, it seems, is passion's undertaker, dressed in the reassuring clothes of routine. Let me paint you a scene. It's a Thursday evening in suburbia. The air smells of reheated lasagna and resignation. She's scrolling through her phone while he watches television. They haven't fought in months. They haven't fucked with genuine hunger in years. Friends call them relationship goals. The local mortician calls them his best advertisement. Kierkegaard wrote, "The most painful state of being is remembering the future, particularly the one you'll never have. But I'll tell you something worse. Living in a present that's already a museum piece. Each day, a careful recreation of the last. Love mummified in the bandages of routine. You want to know when she stops being loyal? It's not when she meets someone else. It's not when she downloads the dating app. It's the moment you stop being dangerous to her. The moment she can predict your every response, anticipate your every need, file you away in the drawer marked sordid." So, the ancient Greeks had a word, pharmakon, meaning both poison and cure. Love operates on the same principle. The very things that stabilize it also suffocate it. That mortgage you signed together? A silk noose. That joint Facebook account? A digital tombstone. That weekend routine of farmers markets and Netflix? The slow, comfortable death of everything that once made her pupils dilate when you entered a room. I'll tell you a secret that would make Machiavelli himself recoil. Women's loyalty isn't broken by what you lack. It's eroded by what you guarantee. The moment she knows she has you completely, irreversibly, permanently, that's the moment her soul begins shopping for exits, even if her body remains. Picture a manor house in the English countryside, circa 1823. Lord Pemberton kept his wife in absolute luxury. Jewels, servants, security. He never raised his voice, never forgot an anniversary, never gave her a single reason to complain. She ran away with a traveling violinist who owned nothing but calloused fingers and uncertain tomorrows. When asked why, she said, "With Pemberton, I knew every sunrise until my death. With Marcus, I don't even know where we'll sleep tonight." The preservation instinct is love's assassin dressed in prudent clothing. Here's what's truly grotesque. You think you're building a fortress of loyalty with your reliability, your consistency, your devoted availability. But you're actually constructing a mausoleum. Every "I love you" at the expected moment. Every predictable gesture of affection, every scheduled date night, these aren't the building blocks of devotion. They're the formaldehyde injections that keep love's corpse looking fresh, while its soul has long since fled. The room grows cold. A moth beats itself against the window, desperate for the moon it will never reach. This is you, beating yourself against the glass of her indifference. wondering why the light grows dimmer each passing year. Modern men have confused possession with passion, security with seduction. We've become curators in our own romantic museums, carefully maintaining exhibits of what once lived and breathed and clawed at the walls. Tell me, when did you last do something that made her genuinely uncertain of what comes next? When did you last see real fear mixed with desire in her eyes? Not the fear of violence or cruelty, but the exquisite fear of unpredictability, of not knowing whether you'll kiss her or walk away, whether you'll stay or disappear into the night like smoke. That flutter in her chest when you were unknowable, that was loyalty being born. That calm in her breathing now that you're cataloged and contained. That's loyalty's death rattle. The mortician's paradox remains. The more perfectly you preserve love, the more obviously dead it becomes. And she'll stay. Oh yes, she'll stay. But loyalty to a corpse isn't loyalty at all. It's just attendance at an endless wake. She feeds on your essence because hers was devoured long ago. In the mountains of Eastern Europe, they tell of the moroi, spirits that drain the life force not through fangs, but through their bottomless need for warmth they can never feel. They don't know they're dead. They think they're just cold. She sits across from you, this beautiful empty vessel, and you mistake her hunger for desire. But listen closely to the sound of her breathing. It's not passion. It's the wheeze of bellows trying to kindle a fire from ashes that went cold in childhood. A therapist in Vienna, 2024, published a paper on what she called emotional vampirism in intimate relations. The clinical language sanitizes what the ancients knew. Some souls are broken cisterns that can never hold what they desperately seek to contain. Pour your love, your attention, your very life force into them, and watch it disappear into an abyss that predates your meeting by decades. Here's what's deliciously tragic. She doesn't mean to drain you. The drowning don't mean to pull down their rescuers. It's simply what drowning looks like. I'll paint you a portrait in shadow and flame. Her father left when she was 7, or stayed but might as well have been a ghost. Or perhaps he loved her too much in all the wrong ways. The details vary, but the wound remains constant, a primordial hunger that learned to wear lipstick and speak in honeyed tones. She learned early that attention is currency, and beauty is a bank account that depletes with age. So she invests wisely. In you, in him, in anyone who might fill the father-shaped void that yawns like a cathedral in her chest. She collects devotion like a dragon hoards gold, not from greed but from a terror of poverty she can't name. Watch her carefully when you compliment her. See how the words disappear into her without leaving a trace? You could praise her for hours, worship at the altar of her beauty, sacrifice your dignity on the bonfire of her need. And still, she'd wake tomorrow asking if you really love her. Because the emptiness isn't in her ears, it's in her essence. Schopenhauer understood. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. And if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom. For it is only when he is alone that he is really free. But she cannot be alone. To be alone is to be with the void, and the void has teeth. The summer night presses against the windows like a spurned lover. Inside, you're performing CPR on something that was never alive, mistaking her responsive moans for resurrection when they're merely the air being pushed through dead lungs. A 2025 study tracking cortisol levels in men involved with high-maintenance partners found something beautifully terrible. The stress hormones spike not during conflicts, but during periods of calm. Why? Because the male nervous system knows what the conscious mind denies. The feeding never stops. Even her contentment is consumptive. Let me tell you about the Japanese concept of Q, emptiness that contains all potential. But there's another kind of emptiness, the Western kind, the traumatized kind. Emptiness that contains only appetite. She is not the fertile void of Zen. She is the barren void of unmet childhood needs, dressed in adult lingerie. Here's a thought experiment wrapped in velvet and thorns. Imagine you could give her everything. Every compliment she craves, every reassurance she needs, every particle of attention she demands. Would she finally be full? Or would she simply develop a larger stomach? You already know the answer. It's written in the exhaustion behind your eyes, in the way you check your phone with a mixture of hope and dread, in the deficit of self that grows larger each day you spend as her life support system. The most exquisite cruelty? She often chooses men who are themselves half empty. Two hungers meeting in the dark, each hoping the other is food rather than a fellow famine. You drink from each other like two people lost in the desert, sharing their last canteen of salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. Machiavelli would laugh at your predicament. You sought loyalty and found dependency. You wanted devotion and got addiction. She'll never leave you true, but only because parasites rarely abandon viable hosts voluntarily. In the candlelight, her face shifts between beauty and something else. Something that reminds you of those deep-sea fish that create their own light to lure prey. Bioluminescent need, gorgeous hunger, a loyalty as reliable as quicksand. Tell me, philosopher of your own demise, what's it like to be loved by someone who's using you as a bandage for wounds you didn't inflict? Can you distinguish any more between her need for you and her need for anyone who'll stand still long enough to be consumed? The empty vessels make the most noise when struck. And you, poor bell ringer, you keep striking, hoping this time the tone will be different. But empty is empty, whether it's dressed in silk or sackcloth. She'll stay loyal to you the way a tick stays loyal to a dog. Not from love, but from necessity. And when you're finally drained, she'll mourn you sincerely, the way winter mourns the leaves it killed. She collects your potential like pressed flowers, beautiful and forever lifeless. There's a room in Prague where they keep butterflies pinned to boards. Thousands of them, each one caught at the moment of perfect beauty, wings spread in eternal flight that goes nowhere. The curator, an old woman with careful hands, whispers to them sometimes. She's forgotten they can't whisper back. This is what she does to men. She is the curator of masculine potential, the collector of almost wears and never wills. Listen. Do you hear that sound? It's the rustling of all your unborn futures, pressed between the pages of her need for safety. She didn't mean to kill them. She simply loved them too much to let them fly. A neuroscientist in Stockholm, 2024, mapped the brain patterns of men in long-term relationships. He found something perversely fascinating. The regions associated with risk-taking and novelty-seeking showed decreased activity proportional to their partner's anxiety levels. In layman's terms, her fear becomes your cage, and you both pretend it's protection. Let me unspool a medieval tapestry for you. In 12th century France, noble women would keep their knight swords during peacetime for safekeeping. The blades grew dull, the knights grew soft. And when war came, they died holding weapons that had forgotten how to cut. The women mourned beautifully. The widow's weeds were exceptionally well tailored. She does this with your dreams, you realize. Takes them for safekeeping. That startup idea sounds risky, honey. Do you really need to take that martial arts class? Your friends are such a bad influence. Each gentle discouragement is another pin through the thorax of possibility. Here's what Nietzsche knew that you're still learning. The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will be lonely often, and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself. But she offers you something more seductive than self-ownership. She offers you the absence of loneliness, and like a morphine drip, it kills the pain along with everything else. The candle flame dances, casting shadows that look like all the men you'll never become. There's the entrepreneur's shadow, the adventurer's shadow, the artist's shadow, all performing their death dance on the wall, while you sit in your sensible chair in your sensible life with your sensible woman who loves you too much to let you live. I knew a man once, brilliant sculptor, hands that could make marble weep. His wife convinced him to take a real job for security. 20 years later, I found him in his garage, running his fingers over tools he hadn't touched in decades. She stayed loyal, he told me. Through everything, she stayed. His hands shook as he said it, not from age, from the tremor of possibilities calcified into regret. A 2025 psychological study coined the term developmental vampirism, when one partner unconsciously feeds on the other's stagnation. Because here's the dark mathematics of insecurity. A man reaching for stars is harder to hold than a man sitting still. So she loves you into stillness, nurtures you into neutrality, domesticates you with such tender care that you mistake the collar for a necklace. The summer air through the window smells of cut grass and surrender. Somewhere, a man is mowing his lawn for the 3rd time this week, because it's easier than remembering he once wanted to sail to Madagascar. She'll frame your cage with such beautiful reasons. Financial security, family stability, mature responsibility, each bar forged from care, each lock clicked shut with love. And you'll pace inside, grateful for the protection, until one day you realize you've forgotten why you ever wanted to run. Here's a question dressed in black lace and bitter herbs. When she says she loves you just as you are, does she mean the man you are, or the man she's carefully prevented you from becoming? Can you even tell the difference anymore? The curator of dead butterflies has the most beautiful collection. Visitors admire the display, the careful arrangement, the preservation of beauty. No one mentions that every specimen had to die for the exhibition to exist. Watch her face when you mention a new dream, a wild idea, a departure from the script. See that flicker of panic before the supportive smile? That's not love, dear prisoner. That's the warden checking the locks. She'll stay loyal to you forever, the way a taxidermist stays loyal to their finest specimen. Preserved, protected, perfectly, permanently dead. But here's the poison in the preservation. You'll stay too, because dead butterflies don't know they can't fly. They think they're just resting. And she'll stroke your wings so gently, you'll never notice they no longer move. The room grows smaller, or perhaps you grow larger with unlived life. Either way, the walls are closing in, papered with all your sensible decisions and her loving fears. Tell me, collector of dust where dreams once lived, what's it like to be so safely loved that you'll never know what you could have become? She trades love like currency, always keeping perfect books. In the bazaars of old Constantinople, they say, lived a merchant who weighed love on golden scales. Each kiss precisely measured, each caress catalogued and priced. She died wealthy and untouched, her ledgers balanced, her heart a vault that never opened. Modern women have perfected this ancient art. They've become actuaries of affection, calculating the exact return on each emotional investment. The clock on the mantle ticks with the precision of her emotional mathematics. 3 compliments from you equals 1 from her. A weekend trip deserves 2 weeks of sweetness. Betrayal, real or imagined, incurs compound interest that accrues across decades. She keeps books that would make Medici bankers weep with envy. A behavioral economist from Tokyo, 2025, documented what he called transactional intimacy syndrome. Couples who scored highest on relationship equity metrics also reported the lowest levels of spontaneous joy. It seems the heart, like the market, crashes when everything becomes a calculation. Let me tell you about the scorpion and the frog. No, not that tired fable. The real one, from Persian mythology, where the scorpion doesn't sting from nature, but from necessity. I must keep accounts, she explains as they both drown. Even in death, especially in death, the books must balance. She learned this from her mother, who learned it from hers. Generations of women taught that love is a resource to be managed, not a force to be surrendered to. Give too much, you're a fool. Give too little, you're cold. So they measure, they calculate, they perform complex algorithms of affection that would challenge MIT graduates. Watch her mental abacus when you disappoint her. See how she withdraws precisely the amount of warmth equal to your transgression. It's not cruelty, it's accounting. Double-entry bookkeeping, where every emotional debit requires a corresponding credit. Here's what's exquisitely suffocating. You can never be ahead in this economy. The moment you think you've accumulated enough goodwill, she devalues the currency. That romantic gesture that earned you a week of passion last year? This year it barely buys you a smile. Inflation in the emotional marketplace is more brutal than Weimar Germany. Schopenhauer wrote, "Buying books would be a good thing if one could also buy the time to read them." In relationships, she buys your devotion, but never invests the time to feel it. She's too busy calculating its worth. The summer evening breathes through lace curtains like a consumptive poet. Beautiful, labored, dying. On the table, 2 glasses of wine sit untouched. She's calculating whether drinking hers would put her in emotional debt. Whether enjoyment now means owing happiness later. I once witnessed a couple in a Parisian cafe. He surprised her with flowers. Instead of joy, I saw her eyes darken with calculation. What would she owe for this unexpected gift? By dessert, she'd manufactured a fight to restore the balance. The flowers wilted between them, like hope in an actuarial table. A 2024 study in the Journal of Relationship Dynamics found that women who describe love in economic terms, invest, return, worth, value, show elevated cortisol levels during intimate moments. Their bodies know what their minds deny. Love cannot be borrowed against. It's not a credit line. It's a wildfire that either consumes or dies. Here's the grotesque beauty of her system. It works. She'll never be hurt the way her mother was, abandoned with nothing but memories and stretch marks. She'll never give more than she gets. She'll never be the fool who loved too much. She'll also never know what it feels like to love without a net. The merchant of measured affection trades in a currency that becomes worthless the moment it's counted. But she counts anyway, compulsively. The way drowning people count their last breaths. Tell me, exhausted trader in this emotional stock exchange. Do you remember what it felt like before love became a transaction? When a kiss was just a kiss, not a payment? When her smile wasn't dependent on your last performance review? The ledger of love is written in disappearing ink, but she keeps writing anyway. And you keep paying, hoping one day to clear a debt that compounds faster than you can earn. She stays loyal, like a bank stays loyal to its best customers, as long as the accounts remain profitable. The moment you're overdrawn on attention, affection, or ability to provide emotional dividends. Watch how quickly she forecloses on what you thought was unconditional. In the candle's dying light, her face flickers between banker and beloved. You're no longer sure which one you're sleeping beside. The merger of hearts you thought you signed became a hostile takeover, and you didn't read the fine print. The merchant closes her books each night, satisfied with the day's trades. Love perfectly balanced, hearts precisely weighed. Every emotional transaction accounted for. And somewhere in the distance, you hear the sound of something wild and precious dying. The last gasps of unmeasured affection, suffocating under the weight of her perfect calculations. She mourns you while you breathe, eulogizing the ghost you've become. In the hill towns of Sicily, there's a tradition called La Vedova Bianca, the White Widow. She wears mourning clothes for a husband who still lives, grieving a death that hasn't happened yet. The townspeople think her mad. They don't understand she's simply punctual with her sorrow. This is your woman now. She speaks of you in past tense while you sit across the breakfast table. He used to be so passionate, she tells her friends, while you're in the next room, still breathing, still technically alive. The air tastes of funeral lilies and fresh coffee. An impossible combination that perfectly captures your predicament. Dead but caffeinated, buried but ambulatory, a walking wake that pours its own drinks. Listen to how she describes you to others. Notice the nostalgic glaze in her eyes, as if recalling someone who died tragically young. He had such dreams, she sighs, and everyone nods sympathetically, as if you're not standing right there. Dreams still technically pulse-checking in your chest like wounded birds. A psychologist in Berlin, 2025, identified what she termed preemptive grief syndrome, the tendency to mourn relationships while still in them. The subjects showed all the classic stages. Denial, he's still the same man. Anger, why won't he be who he was? Bargaining, if I just try harder. Depression, this is all there is. And acceptance, he's gone. The twist? Their partners were very much present, just no longer present enough. Here's what Kierkegaard understood about such living death. The most painful state of being is remembering the future, particularly the one you'll never have. But your woman has evolved beyond this. She remembers a past that may never have existed, starring a version of you that was half projection, half wishful thinking, wholly deceased. I'll paint you a portrait in ashes and anticipation. She fell in love with your potential, that shimmering possible you that existed in the space between first kiss and first disappointment. That man was murdered by mortgages, routines, and the slow suffocation of domesticity. Now she lives with his corpse, occasionally trying to resurrect him with lingerie or date nights, like a suburban Frankenstein with better makeup. The candles gutter in their holders, casting shadows that look like epitaphs. Here lies his ambition. Here lies his spontaneity. Here lies the way he used to look at her. All dead, all mourned, all somehow your fault for the crime of still breathing. She's loyal to you the way one is loyal to a grave. Visiting regularly, bringing flowers, speaking in hushed tones about better days. The loyalty of aftermath. The dedication of denouement. A 2024 study on relationship satisfaction over time found something deliciously morbid. Women who reported feeling stuck with their partners showed brain activity identical to those experiencing grief. They're not lying when they say, "Till death do us part." They just didn't mention they'd pronounce you dead while you still had a pulse. Watch her at parties. See how she introduces you? That slight pause before your name, as if she's forgotten it momentarily. The way she touches your arm, not with desire, but the way one touches a coffin. Reassuring herself you're still there, still solid, still disappointing. Here's a secret wrapped in black silk and bitter laughter. She's not wrong. The man she fell in love with is dead. You killed him yourself, slowly. With each compromise, each abandoned dream, each day you chose comfort over conquest. She's simply the only one honest enough to hold the funeral. The Venetian doges had a ritual, sposalizio del mare, marriage to the sea. Every year they'd throw a ring into the water, wedding themselves to something vast and impossible to possess. Your woman married the ocean of your potential and got a puddle of your reality. Can you blame her for mourning? But here's the exquisite cruelty. She won't leave. Widows rarely abandon graves. She'll tend you with the dedication of the bereaved, arranging your life like flowers on a headstone, making sure you're comfortable in your coffin of contentment. The summer night presses against the windows like all your unlived possibilities trying to break in. Inside, she's already dressed in metaphorical black, practicing eulogies for the man you could have been. Tell me, ghost of your own existence, what's it like to be mourned by someone who shares your bed? To be grieved by someone who still kisses you goodnight, though her lips touch you like flowers placed on a tombstone? She stays loyal to your memory while barely tolerating your presence. The widow of a living man, keeping vigil over a death that happened so slowly. Neither of you noticed until the funeral was over and you were both still breathing. In the morning, she'll make you coffee and stare through you like you're translucent. Already a ghost, already a memory, already the answer to the question, whatever happened to him? The widow of living men has the hardest job. She must mourn without the mercy of an ending, grieve without the closure of a casket, stay loyal to a corpse that keeps asking what's for dinner. And you? You'll sit at that table, breathing but not alive, present but not accounted for, loved but only in the past tense. The ultimate paradox. She'll never leave you because you can't abandon a grave, but she'll never see you either, because the dead become invisible, even when they're sitting right there, holding their own wake in a coffee cup, one sip at a time.